The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall. I play Hera Syndulla on Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you always.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars episode 162.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Mike Creavey, aka Old Ben, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Please be sure to share this podcast on Twitter or Facebook and let us know how we're doing. Leave us a review over there anywhere you can. We'd really appreciate that. So we are jumping now in on this episode of The Secrets of Star Wars to our ongoing breakdown here of Bad Batch Season 2. And this week we're looking at Season 2, Episode 14, called The Tipping Point. And there's a lot to discuss here, so we're going to do something a little different at first under our news segment I want to get to pretty quick here. So joining me tonight to unpack all this is, first up, Jon Koral. Welcome, Jon.
Hello.
Good to have you here. And we also have with us tonight Robert King. Welcome back, Robert. How you doing?
Doing fine. Good to be here.
Well, and as I hinted here, we have some news, because at the time of this recording, the big news sort of floating around, one of the big news pieces is the closure in this big Disney overhaul of all kinds of budget-related costs. They're trying to cut costs everywhere, upwards of $5 billion. As I understand it, they are closing the Galactic Starcruiser attraction after, I think, just about 18 months. And I'm looking at the New York Times article here where they describe it. For those that aren't familiar, the attraction called Galactic Starcruiser was marketed as part luxury hotel, part theme park ride, part role-playing game. Guests are welcomed aboard a 275-year-old space liner and take a celestial voyage on which they might be asked to deliver a secret message, head to the engine room to help repair a fuel valve, or participate in lightsaber training. I feel like I would get the fuel valve thing. Disney said the hotel's final voyage would take place September 28th to 30th. Guests who already booked the hotel after September will be contacted to discuss. See, this is, I'm going to get to John on these question marks. They'll be called to discuss options to modify their plans, it says. So whatever that means. But yeah, so John, we're benefiting here that John with us tonight has been on this attraction. And I wanted to share a little bit just about his experience there and his thoughts on this news. So take it away.
Well, I mean, I was really disappointed when I heard the news. I mean, it seemed like it was going to be coming through, though, kind of soon, because even before this, they had announced that they were, what was it? Or shutting down some of the, or closing some of the boardings that they were setting up. So it wasn't going to be like, they were closing certain dates that they had, because what you would do is, when I went on this, it was over a year ago, and we had a really incredible time, was that we started, we went in on a Sunday, and it was actually Mother's Day. And then you board, and then your first day, you get part of the ship, and then you learn a lot about the ship, and you do everything's on the ship. And then the second day, you get to spend a good chunk of the day, like over maybe half the day or more, in Galaxy's Edge, Batuu. And then the rest of that stuff takes place on the ship again, or the hotel. But it makes you feel like you're in a ship. And it's really, what was really good about it, well, the big issue, of course, was the price, which made it prohibitive to a lot of people, because I think it was like $5,000 to $6,000 for the 2-night stay. And even though that included food, your trip to the Galaxy's Edge and stuff, if you're coming to Disney, you could get a nice hotel there and a lot of park passes to the other ones for more days. So, and then the negative that people would say was, another one that I see a lot is, it was too much of a niche, because it was, you had to be a big Star Wars fan or something. And I think I don't know what.
Like, who would Disney go on it other than?
Well, that's the thing, though.
That was my question.
Well, but part of it is, though, it's like, in my case, though, I'm the big Star Wars fan in my family.
Right.
My wife and daughter liked the show, but I mean, my daughter at the time was 11. We got her up to speed before we went. We're like, because she had never watched any of the Star Wars movies until that past year. And then she got up to watch the Book of Boba Fett with us, and that's how she saw Grogu. And now she's caught up on the Mandalorian, but afterwards. But the thing is they weren't much of a Star Wars fans, but they really enjoyed it. I mean, because you would get into you could wear a costume if you want. A lot of people did. Some people didn't. But like for my daughter, like they said, you're role playing, and you know, that was what I think was most exciting for her. She enjoyed. You know, she got involved with these little secret missions that all these little kids got to be in that the adults weren't in.
Oh,
you know,
cool.
It's like on the ship, because they did tie in some of the stuff that you do, like in Smuggler's Run, to like, is it the coaxium and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they tie that into like your missions and some stuff that you know, on the ship and things like that. And so she was involved with these cast member characters that we didn't even interact with. And she even got to see them first a lot of times, because they would pull these kids into it. And then like during this big scene, you know, or this big thing where everybody's gathered together, you'd see her with a group of other kids being led by, you know, one of these characters. And so she really enjoyed it. And then each room has their own droid, which is a display on the wall, but it was interactive.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was like she would talk to him, and it was so cool because like one time they're like, we need to negotiate for passage through the system, and the guy wants 50 credits, but we only have 20 or 50,000, and we only have 20,000, and we need you to negotiate for us. And then they give you some tips, start low, and something about the negotiator and stuff that, you know, makes him that he likes. And then so my daughter would start 2,000. He'd go, oh no, that can't do 2,000, 45,000. And then she 4,000. And then as I got closer, I said, tell him this, you know, what they told us ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said it, and he's like, oh, I like your style. How about 20? You know, and it was just like, and then the droid would call her the impressor afterwards. And, you know, then later on, she had another negotiation, you know, and it was like, you know, things like that were just really neat touches. And then, of course, you had your data pad, and you were getting these messages, which is actually your cell phone, or maybe if you had an iPad, and you're using this Disney app, and you're getting all these messages. Go to this panel and look this up, and then you could figure out who you were, you know, are you talking to good guys or talking to bad guys, and it would determine then if if the First Order is asking you for information and you're denying it to them, then they're like, okay, you're part of the resistance. But if you're doing it the other way, like, then they're going to lead you to more of a track towards the First Order. And so it was stuff like that. And then when you actually go to Batuu, the next day, they even tell you, okay, ask somebody at the cantina this question. And then you are looking at your data pad or phone, and it's telling you where to go, and then do this, you know, to send a signal or whatever, and scan these things or do that. And it really builds upon itself. So it was pretty neat. And that's where the role playing came in. And then things you learn that you think are just, you know, like ship things that you would do like on a cruise ship, except this is a galactic cruise ship. Like, you know, you would do the lightsaber training. You did the learning how to work on the bridge. So like one night, they go through, here's how you do shields. Here's how you do engineering. Here's how you do the guns. And then that's the first night. Then the second day, you get to apply that with the way the storyline goes. And it's really cool, you know, how that all plays out. And, you know, then you do get to interact with the captain and all these other characters as they want, you know, mill around with people and stuff. And so it was funny because, and then even one part after Batuu, depending on how you scan things and where you get to, you know, I was in the special room with a meeting, and he had one character come in and then another special character on the hologram. And afterwards, this guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, you're looking at that hologram. And I was looking at it, but it was like they were staring right at us. How, you know, and I was sitting across the room, and it was just really done well. And
that sounds really good. And does it, I'm assuming it had to be like, for it to all work out, because I didn't look into how it works too much, but I'm assuming they would have to have kind of the set kind of 2-day time frame for like everybody there. Like, in other words, it's not like a normal hotel, so to speak, of course, like where any given day you've got people who came there different times. It's like a extended attraction over those 2 days kind of thing.
Well, what it is I think they had like 2 shifts, like, and then the first shift would be like the early dinner, and then the other one would be like the late dinner.
Yeah.
And then you always had your schedule to go to. So it was like, okay, if you had dinner at 7, somebody else might have it at 8 or something, or however they set it up. And then what was funny is we were talking to a friend we met there, and he was set up, he dressed up as Kylo Ren, and his wife was dressed up as Rey. And but you know, you could, and my wife, she kind of was like a double agent. She would answer some questions for the First Order, mostly for the Resistance, but back and forth. But the thing is what you would do is be like, 8 o'clock, you're here. At 8 o'clock, they're at some other place. Then at 9 o'clock, you meet the captain at this point. And then at 9 o'clock, they would meet him in the lobby, Lieutenant Corey in the lobby at that time. And then, so that's how they would bring people together, is they'd be like, okay, the main action's happening at 9 or 10 o'clock, and then they're going to gather somehow there, and then you're going to see how things play out.
Okay. Huh.
And then of course, when you watch the last big lightsaber fights and everything, and like you see on the commercials, that was pretty cool too.
I mean, it just sounds like there's so much, and I don't know if Robert, if you have anything to add just from your, like, I know you said you weren't able to go yourself, but to other people you've heard comment on it. I mean, do you think like did they just bite off more than they could chew maybe with it, or is it just a casualty of the Disney's restructuring? I mean, who knows?
I mean, I was saying before we started recording that, yeah, I was really looking forward to hearing your experience, John, because I've heard nothing but negative things about the whole experience. And like, one of the things that I've read a number of times was that, like, the whole thing just felt kind of cheap, which I wonder I wonder how much of that negativity is coming from I just dropped $6,000 on this. It had better, blow me away. And
the expectation.
And it sounds, I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of fun and there was a lot of cool stuff going on, but it maybe wasn't $6,000 worth of fun stuff going on.
That's probably part of, because I think what people come into it, it's like, now, I've never been on a cruise, so it's like, and this is supposed to be like a cruise ship idea and stuff. And I wonder too, if some people are like, if I'm spending this much on a cruise and this is all we're doing, because it's like, there's no big pool to go jump in. There's no big,
like we're not actually
no
going anywhere
and stuff.
Not even a giant back to tank.
No, but they do have like a bar where you can play Sebek and stuff. And my daughter loved that game too.
Oh,
and
man.
You let your daughter gamble.
Well, I know. Well, as she gets older, if they ever make that a legal gambling game, and when she's 21, then she could do it. She'd do pretty well with it.
It's good practice. No.
But I do think that might be part of it, because it's like I said too, when you're spending as much money as you're spending at Disney on a trip, and you could say, well, I could spend 3, 4, 5 days in other parks at nice hotels in Disney and stuff, and versus the 2 nights. But the other thing that was kind of cool and was, really though, the thing is when you get there, unless you have an emergency or some reason to get off, you really don't see it. You don't see anything that's outside the park. You're really immersed, because you get in there, the elevator you take to the floor, they make it look like a shuttle going into space to get to your to the cruiser. Then when you actually go to Batuu, it's kind of like those airline line where you go down the runway or the walkway, and you only see the door to the plane, and then you get on the plane, and then it's kind of like that when you get on the transport to get to, and then they make it look like you're flying again or something as your bus or whatever it is goes to the entrance in Batuu. But then you actually come in next to the cantina in a special entrance. You don't come in like the main entrance. So it's kind of like you're landing there and you're walking out into the spaceport. It's kind of a neat feeling that way. And then when you leave, it's the same thing. When you go back through that, you don't have to go through all the other lines that you normally would. And then it's just pretty. And then when you finally leave again, it's like you're taking the shuttle out, and then like, okay, now I'm back to reality.
The reality of the normal Disney experience.
Right. Yeah. Just the run of the mill.
Right. And the other thing too was they made the food look different too, of course. So out of this world. So what would be like shrimp cocktail on Earth, and on the Galactic Starcruiser, it looked like Avatar blue, baby, And it was like, do I really want to? It's like I like eating shrimp cocktail, but it was like. Sometimes that, and I wonder if sometimes that threw people off too. It's like,
that's like
even
too personal, like what we're eating.
Yeah. Right.
But I wanted a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And that was the thing is like, it's a lot of the same kind of food you'd have on a cruise ship, but with a galactic twist on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, but going forward, I'm wondering though if they could still keep it. I think their best option would be to keep it as a niche hotel, because they have that bar where you can place the back, and it's already set up as a hotel anyways. It's and then they already have a dining area with unique foods, whether or not you want to have entertainment and stuff like they do at night with it and all that, or just make it buffet style. But, and then the idea of maybe dropping guests off at Galaxy's Edge, it's like on that special entrance, if you're paying for that rate, maybe you get to come in a better way to Hollywood Studios, that kind of thing. And instead of the other way. And then, you could still do some of the things like the bridge training, lightsaber training, and some of those other guest activities too, as part of it. But then you wouldn't need all the extra cast members and the whole storyline and all the data pad stuff and things like that. And maybe that would cut the cost, but also allow people to have a Star Wars experience, Yeah,
because they spent, I was looking at here, wasn't it like $300 million or something? It's hard to imagine that they could just junk it or something. Yeah, there has to be a way to repurpose some of that, but I don't know. Anything else either you guys want to add on this before we jump over here to the Bad Batch? Because I wanted to set some time aside for this conversation here, because this is breaking news, and we have a rare opportunity to get John's take here, which is awesome. So
we break the news, so you don't have to.
That's right.
Well, I will say this. I guess one last thing I want to say was I saw was that it was funny. During the first day, a guy came up to this older, guy, well, probably a little younger than me, but, it's like, probably in his late 30s, 40s or whatever. And he was like, this is so cool. Our kids just don't appreciate what kind of, he's got little or younger kids don't appreciate this opportunity. Growing up when I was their age, I would have loved to have this kind of thing and stuff. And then what was funny is at the end of the first night, when it's like the cliffhanger happens, everything happens. And then they're like, okay, go to your bunks. I think it was even 11 o'clock, and then you heard a little kid say, is there any more? Because they were getting so excited by the whole story. And it's like, it's like, and so it was pretty cool. And it's like seeing how, these adults are acting like kids. And then it was also though seeing cool how the kids were enjoying the experience too over time. A lot of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, we'll see. We'll see what the next chapter of whatever they do is. But we're for now, we're looking tonight, here or today, whenever you're listening to this. You could be listening to this in the morning, of course, but for us, it's night. And we're looking at Tipping Point here, and I just want to share, as usual, as I like to share here, just the brief little Wikipedia summary of it. So we have. Following last week's episode or the previous episode, Pabu, which was a very Edenic in some ways until the tidal wave thing. But, we have this setup of the Bad Batch having this potential new path maybe. And then we jump right into episode 14, Tipping Point. It says here, several clones imprisoned for disobedience against the Empire, including Hauser, are rescued by a group of rogue clones led by Echo and Gregor and brought to Coruscant, where Senator Chuchi questions them about their intended fate. With only a few encrypted data scraps recovered in the raid, Echo rejoins the Bad Batch on Pabu. Meanwhile, on Mount Tantus, the transport's destination, Crosshair is interrogated by Dr. Hemlock about the whereabouts of the batch, specifically Omega. He escapes in an inattended moment. That's a really weird sentence. He escapes in an inattended moment and sends a warning to his former comrades before being recaptured and subjected to more intense torture. After receiving the message and analyzing the data Echo recovered, the batch learns about the existence of the Empire's secret advanced science division. So, that in a nutshell. And right off the bat, I thought it was cool. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the last time we saw Hauser was that arc that they had in season 1, I think on Bad Batch on Ryloth. Because I'm pretty sure he's in that episode with Cham Syndulla and young Hera, and like when we saw them in season 1. So that was kind of neat seeing him again. Echo and Gregor are always fun to see. And then I don't know, that was a pretty well executed, needless to say, well executed boarding and recovery operation. What do you guys think of that scene?
You could definitely tell they'd done this before, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean that oh gosh, what did they call the leech shuttle?
Oh yeah.
Was such a cool little concept, and they maneuvered it expertly.
Mm-hmm.
And the Imperials didn't have a chance. I mean, you knew they were going down from the pride, the arrogance of the commanding officer there, right? But the rescue operation was just magnificently planned and executed.
I mean, I just liked all the action. I mean, from the start, it was pretty intense, and it was just, I mean, like Robert said, it was really well done with the, obviously, like, they did know what they were doing. They got in there. I liked how the one troops get in there, and then they open up the little hatch, and they're waiting, and there comes the grenade knocking out a few. Then it closes again, and little stuff like that. And then how they sneak up from behind. It was just, it was pretty impressive that, just how quick and efficient they were. And then, of course, then the commander of the ship, whatever, kills himself with that biting into that pellet or whatever it is.
I had to look him up. You know who he reminded me of? Was Jake Busey, Gary Busey's son, who played that creepy, bad guy in Contact, like in the 90s, and but he had that really like platinum blonde hair and like the blood, like he had that sort of I don't know, like if this was live action in the 90s, that's who I would cast, for what it's worth. Yeah, because Disney's asking that. But yeah, no, you're right. And this is just such a, these guys know what they're doing. They're building this network. And of course, Hunter, I think, later asks Echo something that they've had this conversation before, I feel like, a little bit, but that not so much. I like the way it's done. I can't quite describe it. Not so much like Hunter's trying to tell Echo that Echo's doing the wrong thing, but just trying to get him to at least consider, like, what can you guys really do? Like looking at this enemy and how far, because of course, they're not overly sentimental, of course, but they care about each other, and Hunter doesn't want to see Echo, go down a path that sees, his destruction. But getting ahead of myself a little bit on that, but this interaction we have, this sidebar, I thought was interesting, and maybe get your guys' thoughts a little bit on, again, without spoiling anything, because we still have a few episodes to go, but I'm still trying to imagine in my mind, how does this, like Echo, specifically Echo, Rex, Gregor, this kind of, paramilitary stuff, and Senator Chuchi's involvement, and we know Bail Organa as well. How does this kind of connect the dots to like the Andor time period, right? Or like this, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. I can't help but wonder. I just don't think it ends well for the clones. I keep coming back to, I don't know. It's doesn't look good for them. What do you think?
I mean, I think you're right. I think this is very much the issue they're raising is we had these clones, and throughout all the rest of Star Wars, we still have plenty of droids, even though they were one part of the war. But we don't have the clones anymore, and except for a few stragglers here and there, and it's yeah. I'm guessing that season 3 will be about like the downfall of all the clones.
That's
they'll
feeling,
be
that's feeling
probably
like the
destroyed. Yeah, maybe as completely as the Jedi.
Oh, what do you think, John? It's not looking.
Well, I wasn't thinking. Yeah, because really, I mean, as you look at the storyline, I mean, what was it? Was it Kenobi where they had like a homeless clone or something like that? And,
the homeless vet,
and stuff. I mean, you didn't have. I mean, other than Boba Fett and stuff, it's like you really don't have clones in the, at least that we know of, in the the Star Wars universe, starting with A New Hope and everything. I mean, or at least it's pretty limited, if it is. And you have to, and as you still see all these people, I mean, there's still a lot of clones out there right now, but they're getting. You keep seeing them go away, whether they're being imprisoned or, left on cold planets to die because, they're transferring to the stormtroopers and stuff. I mean.
Well, and there was that bit of dialogue between, oh gosh, now I'm blanking, Hemlock, Dr. Hemlock and Governor Tarkin about... Tarkin is decommissioning the clones, and Hemlock says you should send them to me. Just getting them out of the army isn't going to solve the problem. You need to send them to me for what you might think of as a more final solution, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, and I do wonder, as I don't think I'll ever actually get sick of seeing Temuera Morrison pop up, or like even like the flashback in Mandalorian with the I keep wanting to say just Jar Jar rescuing Grogu. That's not fair. Having now I'm forgetting his name. Darn it.
Oh, Ahmed Best.
Yeah, Ahmed Best, but I can't remember the character's name. I'll think of it later.
I'm blanking on it as well.
But of course they credited Temuera Morrison with the voice. I don't know if he actually was in the sound booth or something just to have clone troopers yelling like shoot him or whatever they did. But it just makes you wonder, like, are we gonna, like, would they realistically, like, where do they draw the line? They're gonna catch up with was it Cut LaQuaine and the deserter that has his family, like the Twi'lek wife and the two boys that the Bad Batch bumped into. It made me like, what are we gonna catch up to them 10-15 years now, and you have Temuera Morrison like on the farm, so I don't know if it's
for
just
the record. Oh, sorry. For the record, Keller and Beck is the Jedi that Ahmed Best plays. Yeah,
the hero who saved Grogu. No, I should get he's got to have an action figure by now. So, but yeah, I mean, it's not hard to imagine here that, I mean, with, again, up to the regular, original timeline, original movies, there's not really any mention of the clones.
Well, and then also the thought too, it's like, since they grow and develop quicker, how long is their typical lifespan? So even if they do make it, how long do they live? Do they live 50 years? Do they live 30 years? It's
has that I don't think that's been officially addressed, has it? Like, if like the acceleration slows down, or I don't know.
I mean, I think it has been confirmed that is it Rex? One of the clones was in the Battle of Endor.
Well, that I think the way they did it was, because that was like a kind of a meme thing, I think, for a while. It was kind of a joke, but I think they picked it up because on one of the official Disney animated graphics, they those like oh, for goodness sake, I can't think of it. The shorts that they did, the Forces of Destiny or something like that, like one of those, which is official and everything. They show like a really highly stylized cartoonish image of like a bunch of the main actors, on Endor. and they show that guy not too far from the distance, and his sleeve is back, and he has clone armor, like Rex's clone armor underneath it. And I was like, oh, they're doing it. So all the speculation, of course, now with Ahsoka coming up, that and I've heard that there was concept art, with Rex and stuff. So I'm sure he'd do it. It'd be kind of cool, but I don't know. I don't know how old that would make him, right? I mean, or how old he would appear, right? Because he's going to look older than he technically is, I suppose. So, but one thing I actually want to ask you guys about, speaking of the original movies and stuff, did you catch, there were a few, just the aesthetic I mentioned to you before we recorded, the overall look, like there was just, I haven't watched anything Star Wars, at least in a few weeks. And,
how dare you?
I know, which is like this long gap now. But when Crosshair was running around, and just the look of that facility, it's so, original Death Star, kind of look, and the interrogation droid, the sound effects are pretty much identical to that scene with Leia, in the original, and I even think, I don't know if you picked up on this, but when I've rewound it a few times, when Crosshair's trying to put the code in to contact the batch, there's just the slightest, it's only like a fraction of a second, they threw in, I swear, a little sort of sample, I think, of the sound effect that plays when Obi-Wan is like lowering the shields. Remember, it's like walking around that thing, and it's like, like that it's that, and it was so like distinct. I kept rewinding it. I'm like, that's a good, like, what even is that? Of course it would sound like that, whatever he's doing. So, but yeah, that's all. I guess I was just thinking it really does. They just get the look right, I feel like. And the animation just is so incredible. It just still really blows me away.
I mean, they picked up, I think, like I was going back. So I've been, prepping for Ahsoka. I've been going back and watching. Disney Plus has this, essential Ahsoka episodes, and it starts in season 1 of the Clone Wars. And it's like, oh yeah, the animation in season 1 was not that great, actually. But by, season 6, season 7, they had really improved the animation. And Bad Batch, that was the starting point for Bad Batch. And so, yeah, I've always liked the animation in Bad Batch. It's really worked well. And I agree. The sort of what is it? Imperial brutalist architecture is very much on point. I like that they the ship design is really strong too, and frankly even locations like Pabu are. They fit in very well with the way the Star Wars galaxy far, far away has expanded. So yeah, I think which
is impressive because it's so different. Like a location like Pabu, and like Wrecker's sitting there with a fishing pole, but like it's like kind of like space Santorini. Well, not quite, but like not quite that polished, but he's, and then like, back and forth. But I'm sorry, John, I think you were about to, I think I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, that's all right. I mean, the only thought I was going to go back to was when you were talking about with Crosshair putting in this, making the distress call or whatever. That room actually reminded me a lot about in Star Wars. They were on the Death Star, like you were mentioning, but at the detention center, when, they show up, with in the stormtrooper outfits and stuff, it was like that kind of reminded me a little bit, especially with the circuit in the middle there, and then that kind of thing, because as you were talking about it being a Death Star kind of feel.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that for some reason. Yeah, that little circular command post thing. Yeah. Although Hans is always the best. Just that, like, it's so no one but Harrison Ford could pull that off.
Well, I was expecting Crosshair to shoot that too. Yeah, it's like
we're fine. How are
conversation
you?
Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was wondering though if you guys. I mean, this is more of a. I don't know. Might as well just bring this up now because we want to get to I know Dr. Hemlock, and there's a few things we're going to go here. But before I forget, maybe just throw this out there, because he's, Crosshair's, of course, sort of in the background. I don't know if I'd say he's at the center of this episode specifically, in some ways. But like, I'm just curious, like, what do you think at this point his motivation really is? Because I'm not sure that I really have a real firm sense of that yet, because I have to keep reminding myself, like, he hasn't been with them, since the beginning of the first season, in terms of a regular, sort of being in their presence. So there's, that's something that struck me this time, is just, how much time has passed in the story itself and the character development, like all the things he hasn't been there for. I don't know. I'm kind of having a hard time imagining, Crosshair converts and he jumps back in and joins the team again. I kind of feel like it's not quite going to that. I don't know.
I was thinking more on the lines of, I'm trying to think how to say this best. It's like he still sees them as his brothers, and I think there's part of the team to an extent, whereas he was all in earlier. But at the end of season 1, right, they carry him around when he's like knocked out and stuff like that, because they don't want to, so they don't leave him to die. But then they also give him his free will of, okay, you make this decision. And I think he's at a point of, okay, maybe it's kind of, well, they saved my life and I owe it to them, versus kind of like not necessarily I want to be on the team, but it's kind of like a life debt kind of thing. Maybe, I don't know. It's like, I'm not going to go hunt them, but I'm also not going to, but I'm still going to support, at least initially support the Empire. And then of course, as the season's gone on, you can see how he questions that more and more as he talks to other clones, and then sees how they're being treated and that kind of and then leading to last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess, when he shot that officer.
I mean, I think he really does have a change of mind, that, you see him looking in on the other cells as he's being taken to the interrogation chamber, and they're all clones, and he's recognizing some of them. And I think he really has come around to realize, Hunter was right. The Bad Batch, the rest of the batch, they were right about the Empire not caring about us. And if he had any doubt, it came, Hemlock saying, why should you care about her? She is Imperial property. Like all the clones, she is Imperial property. I think he may or may not want to rejoin them. Kind of like Hunter and Wrecker and Tech are reluctant to join with Echo and Rex in the rebellion cause. Crosshair may or may not want to rejoin the team, but I think he has become convinced he was wrong and they were right.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like he would, I don't know, it strikes me, and I hadn't really thought this through till now, but like, he strikes me as more of, like, if he does survive, somehow gets out of all of it, like, I think he would fit nicely in the, I don't know, like, kind of gun for hire or bounty hunter, or I don't know about bounty hunter, but, like, just kind of, because he's, he has just brutally executed some people. Like, he's definitely
a practical man.
Yeah, he's in a different category, right? Than the other guys. Like, he definitely is, and I feel like it would be a sort of a destiny fallacy, like, to change that about him. Like, we cut to next season, or like season 3 ends with I don't know, like season 3 ends with Crosshair, like, opening up a school, and like he's like gets a dog, and I'm like, no, that's not quite it. Like, there's a lot of shooting in his future, I think, one way or the other.
I mean, honestly, I think the best way for season 3 to end would be for them to paint a big red stripe on the side of their ship and fly off into hyperspace with the A-Team theme starting to play, you know.
Just fully commit to it.
Yeah. Yes, we're the A-Team in space.
Oh my goodness. And I can't remember who, somebody and our friends of the show remind us later. Someone will forgive me, but I forget who said it. I don't know if it was you, Robert. I think it was somebody else, but maybe it was you a while back, because I think this was maybe some episodes before Mandalorian when we were still talking about Bad Batch. But someone had done a comparison between the shots of Tantus, like sort of, was it Tantus, I think, at the end of season 1 versus this season, and the difference of like daylight versus like nighttime. And there was like there were certain trees in the shot from the first season where it was a little more of a beautiful setting, and now there was like fewer trees, and they were just kind of walking through a really interesting, it might have been Catherine, because she's artistic, maybe she noticed that, but about
could be it wasn't me,
and so we've just
it was somebody else.
But I mean, this episode, like it's almost more like the real dark and stormy kind of stuff we were used to with Camino in this one, which I won't, that foreboding kind of like, well, and look what happened to Camino. So I really have that sense of like this. It's the same people who did that. It's that look is definitely there.
You think Tantus is doomed?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's a good bet. So, but I wanted to ask you guys about, at the heart of that whole place, of course, is Dr. Hemlock. And as much as I was saying, I love the aesthetic, the Star Wars aesthetic. I did have some funny moments where I was like, I get a little, I get tired sometimes of really bright artificial light, like in my classroom. And so sometimes when the students are out and I have a free period or whatever, I'll shut the lights off, and I have these big windows. So usually I'm letting, daylight in. But I was laughing because like there's a couple of those scenes, especially his chat with Tarkin and Hemlock sitting there. And it's just like, I'm sitting there like, can we get a light bulb in here? Like, why? It's just dark, and just his face is just lit up from his data pad, and there's like nothing else distinguishable in the room. And I'm like, dude, turn the lights on. I mean, it's just a little bit of, someone needs a seasonal affective disorder lamp at Mount Tantus. Maybe that'll calm him down a little bit. But yeah, what do you guys think of Dr. Hemlock here? I just thought I'd get your take. I mean, he's come up on the show before, but we even had a chance to talk about him and kind of how you think he lines up here as a Star Wars villain. Maybe John, I'm gonna jump over to you first.
Well, sorry. When I look at Dr. Hemlock, I mean, it's he's, well, and as Tech brings up too, it's like not much is known about him, other than unauthorized testing and questionable or the way he does things. And I mean, I think he's so it's like I as I'm sitting here and haven't watched definitely the last 2 episodes yet, he looks like a pretty good villain, like a lot of other ones. But it's like, is he doing this because he's wants to do certain things with the clones, or is he doing it to eradicate the clone? It's like, I don't know what his end game or his the actual motive is behind everything he's doing. And it's kind of at this point, because then you have is it as bad as it is it worse? It's like, I'm not exactly sure. But the fact though, he just sees them as property. I mean, all clones is Imperial property, and then what can you do with property? Whatever you want with it, I guess. And with his testing and stuff. So I think I don't know. I have a pretty negative view of him as a villain. I mean, like sometimes you could see a character and say, okay, like Dr. Pershing, right? He's a guy who maybe did bad things, but had maybe good intentions, at least in his mind. But I'm thinking,
at some point anyway, yeah.
Right. To at least to a certain level. But then this is the whole other, I think, not good intentions, and for whatever tests he's wants to do.
I mean, this is more of a meta take, but it's what is impressing me about like this whole era of Star Wars media that we have is how committed it is to sort of justifying the Last Skywalker. So everything is kind of tied into this cloning program and establishing that this cloning program was the Emperor's real plan all along.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cynical part of me wants to say, oh, this is just a way to, try to keep the franchise going after that, flub
Mm-hmm.
of a movie. And the artistic part of me is like, look at the craft that they are using to reframe a flub of a movie as something that actually can have dramatic weight. And Hemlock is very clearly, I think he has zero concern for the clones, but I think he wants to do research on the clones because it's part of the Emperor's big cloning program that is his real secret plan all along.
Right. Well, and Hemlock, this was, I just, excuse me, I just noticed here that I saw the name before who voiced him, but for some reason I didn't make the connection. So, but Jimmy Simpson, who does his voice, was what's funny is I definitely don't recommend for many folks. Of course, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There is highly morally problematic material in that comedy, but I did enjoy it back in the day, and he plays a pretty bizarre character on that show. But I don't know if you guys ever watched Psych, 15 years ago. He was, do you remember Mary, like Mary, Mary, and they make fun of it, Mary Lightly, the kind of weird guy that he thinks for a while might be like the Yin killer or whatever, or the Yang killer, but he just turns out to be this sort of mousy, squirrely kind of weird guy. It's him, which was just kind of funny. I hadn't seen him in a long time, but so that's Jimmy Simpson's been a lot of stuff. I guess more recently he's been on I just lost it here too. Some Star Trek stuff, apparently, some video game work, and then Westworld and House of Cards. He was on there too. So, that's always fun. Some of us, I think, have talked about that before too. That when you see these, do you guys go to the cast list usually? Do you ever come across some voices when you're listening that make you scratch your head a little? Like, I know that guy.
Sometimes I definitely went to the cast list for Dr. Emery Carr, and it was not the voice that I thought it was. But and for John's sake, I won't say what prompted me to go looking for that.
Just a
voice actor, but because John has not seen the last two episodes, which is it's exciting that we still have somebody who's innocent in this world.
What's funny though, Robert, when you mentioned that, I laugh though, because Keisha Castle Hughes, I still can't her voice is, what's weird to me is I don't associate her with her own voice, because the thing I mostly the thing she was most famous for, for me was she played Mary in the Nativity Story. That was 2005 or 6, I think that came, or no, 6 or 7, somewhere in there that came out. So she was very young at the time, but she was doing this sort of quasi, Israelite accent, in English, and so it's bizarre when you just hear her in her, because she's from New Zealand, I think, correct? Pretty sure she is.
She was born in Australia, but she is a Kiwi. Yeah.
Okay. I know sometimes that I want to get that right, especially for our Catholics of Oz friends.
But at least according to this bio, okay. She was born in Donnybrook, Western Australia, but her nationality is New Zealander.
Which, hey, look, come to think of it, here's a funny connection because Oscar Isaac plays Joseph in that movie, and he's, of course, Poe Dameron. So Star Wars always intersects with with everything at some point. In fact, I was just playing a game a few weeks ago with some of my students. We had some, we finished early on this unit. We had like a half a class period to spare. And we were doing the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game. Where you connect movie actors and stuff. But we were specifically trying to connect actors to Star Wars somehow in like 6 or less connections. And it was not that difficult to do.
And getting easier. I mean, every time you have another guest who or someone who's part of an episode.
Well, and some of them are such great hub characters like Carl Weathers. Like that's like every action. I mean, it's so easy to get him into action movie connections somehow, or so.
Yeah, although I still think his best role was, again, not recommended for everybody, but his role in Arrested Development was fantastic.
Oh. My wife always thinks of him as Chubbs from Happy Gilmore. Which was, I haven't seen that in years, but yeah, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. Oh man. So let me ask you guys here. I asked about Crosshair's motivation. That was something I want to make sure we got to a little bit, but
back to this episode.
But it's a hub episode too here, but and that's the thing too, is because of course the way that they, they didn't release, or did they? Did they release episode without sharing anything? But I can't remember now. Did they release episode 15 and 16 on the same day? Did they do that again, or were
I believe they did? Yes.
Because they've done that with some of these. Remember, I think the season premiere, or the first episode or 2 or whatever of season 1 was like super long, or, they do these things sometimes if there's a bigger narrative. And that's, I'm kind of getting at what you had brought up early on, Robert, we could maybe kind of talk about all of us together here, the overall feel of sort of season 2 here. Because, we don't really, I hate to say, but I don't think a whole lot really happens in this episode per se. We have a little continuing of these different storylines, but Crosshair ends up right where he started, of course, at the beginning of the episode, just with an upped dosage on his torture bot, and we don't really know what to expect, to see where he's going to be next time. So, we have the batch now knows about it. Like, what are they going to do, if anything? Like, how are they going to find him? Because we don't know where this facility even is. There's all these question marks. But you had mentioned something earlier about, this announcement, I guess, of season 3 kind of wrapping this up, or at least hinted at that, if not directly, stated. And I think you had said something to the effect, maybe you could flesh this out a little more about how you felt, at least watching it, the episodes kind of having that weight to them in a good way, but maybe the season as a whole maybe leaving you wanting a little bit. If I'm saying that right, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the season has been accused of having a lot of filler episodes, and I myself have basically enjoyed most, if not all, of the episodes for their own sake, but they all felt kind of disconnected to what I felt was like the larger storyline. And I guess what I mean disconnected is it felt like they weren't moving the story very far. So like you said, this episode, Crosshair ends up exactly where he was. The rest of the batch gets one piece of information that's going to lead them to a decision, but they don't actually make the decision in this episode. And it's it's a lot of running around in action and not a whole lot plot wise actually happening. And the whole season has kind of felt like that. At the same time, it feels like they are dropping a lot of information in each episode, a lot of character information, a lot of sort of world information, what's going on with the clones, how is the Empire developing, and so on. And it just feels like all of season 2 as a whole is just setting up for season 3. Like, they know where they want to go with season 3. But they've got to do a lot of setup to get there, and so they kind of sacrificed season 2 to the setup, and that's a little disappointing to me. But at the same time, I'm hoping, maybe I'm a little overly optimistic, but I'm hopeful that season 3 will pay off. I mean, without spoiling things for John, sorry, John. The last 2 episodes really have a lot of dramatic, plot impact, and it changes the situation for these characters in a really powerful way. And so it's clear that season 3 is gonna have a strong start to it, because it's gonna, the end of season 2 demands that it pick up from where they're leaving off. That said, I don't know. Star Wars is not infallible.
Well, yeah, that's true.
So I am.
We like to pretend it is sometimes.
I mean, I was telling you earlier. I have this kind of love-hate relationship with Star Wars, because I love it so much, and then it keeps breaking my heart. And so, I'm optimistic about Ahsoka, but it might not play out. And I'm optimistic about Bad Batch season 3, but it might not play out. And frankly, I'm optimistic about the 3 movies that they've announced recently.
Yeah,
but it might not play out. So I don't know.
We'll have to see. John, what do you think? I don't know how to rephrase it necessarily, but just, I guess, your overall take of the season so far, especially because you haven't seen the conclusion yet. I'm just curious. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like we were talking, I guess, beforehand. I do like, to an extent, that they seem to have a lot of individual episodes, or like Robert was saying, focus like this one on tech, this one on Crosshair, this one about the clones in general with Senator Chuchi. It was like they had and they do provide a lot of information or build those characters, but then you wonder where they're going to go with that. And I like that to an extent, but then I really like this episode because it seemed like it started really to bring a little bit more together of, okay, here's the raid on the clone transport, here's back with Crosshair, not just Crosshair this whole episode, but actually, Crosshair for part of it. Let's do something with his character. Now let's go to the Bad Batch and do something with them. And now let's go back to Crosshair. Let's go to, whoever, the other clones or whatever, and it was like, to me,
it reminds you that they're all part of one story.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's where I think I get a little frustrated when, it's like, it's nice. Like I said, it's good to develop that, but then, especially with how short some of these episodes are, they're only, with before credits, sometimes they're like, 20, 25 minutes. So it's like, you get this piece and you're like, oh, well, I really would have liked to see more about the Bad Batch. And then the next one's the whole time about the Bad Batch. But then it's like, I wonder what happened to Crosshair, and it's like, then you got to just keep waiting. Oh, there he is again, and it's like, that's where I think it gets a little disjointed with it. It's like, it would be better to see, oh, what's Crosshair doing from this point to that point. Even if it was just like 2 or 3 minutes, just to see his career instead of, oh, let's just get him now and let's, these points in time. But overall, I've enjoyed the season. It's just, but it's funny too. It's like, it started out kind of harsh with that Rampart guy shooting people and killing them at the end of episode or whatever. Yeah. Then it kind of cooled off for a while. And then it seems like it's getting harsh again, and I know it's rated PG, so it's not like U7 or something like that for TV. Right. So you don't mind that, but it's interesting to see how that changes too. It's like, it seemed, that ebbs and flows. Like sometimes they'll be like, oh, let's kill that guy off. And then other times, oh, okay, let's
or every time
go a while.
An Imperial gets cornered, now they just bite real hard and their whole head goes lightning and they drop. I'm like, oh boy, that's
right.
Yikes. Well, is there anything else in particular, you guys wanted to make sure we thought about a little bit or wanted to share with any of the listeners about this episode? Or
one thing I highlighted was when they're at Pabu and they're Echo shows up. The one thing that was interesting is, like Hunter says, you've seen the power you're up against. You can't defeat them, right? And it's like, and then Echo says something like, it's not about that. It's about fighting for our brothers. And it makes me think, though, like Hunter, a lot there sounds like Andor in the beginning. You know, like, you know, we just can't beat these guys. What's the purpose of doing all this stuff? It's just better kind of survive on your own kind of thing, you know, or whatever. And, you know, it's not until he meets that one character, and I can't remember his name, with the manifesto and everything. It's like,
I know who you mean. Yep.
and then eventually his mother or and stuff. How was it his grandmother or mother that raised him? And then
adoptive mother,
right? And then and then he understands everything a lot more, and you can see Hunter maybe understanding it more himself, but he's, I think, still at that, you know, out for himself, kind of, let's keep us, you know, our group safe and do what we can, you know, and then help others as we can, like an A-team guy over time, but not the bigger picture of what, like, Echo seeing about, you know, it's not just about us and our small group. It's about all our brothers out there that are suffering, and we need to go and help all of them, and as much as we can. And that's why he's doing it with Senator Tucci and building his own team of people in the, you know, spies and whatever underground and all that stuff, which is kind of, I thought was interesting. And another scene I just loved was the flying directions, you know, learning how to fly the Marauder with tech.
That was a lot of fun.
And just seeing Omega, that whole scene was just hilarious.
The tech turn. I love it. It's like, that is not its proper name. Although I do like the sound of it. Like he's like, that's the racer in him kicking in, right? You know, for that earlier episode. You know, which was one of my favorites, by the way. The tech's race.
And then the other thing too was, and you can barely hear it, but he's like, and, you know, when she talks about the tech turn, and he's like, and then maybe you should do this before I come back to my senses or something like that. It's, you know, and then, right, it was just making the turn and stuff. But that, I think that's what I like about the Pabu episodes, is you're seeing a fun side and the more family kind of side of things where, you know, do we need to stay here or move on? And, you know, again, like soldiers. But that was kind of a nice thing to see with.
I forget the mayor or whatever, you know, the chieftain, whatever his position is, his comment about, you know, is that all you are? You know, and
right.
That's that refrain, you know, and that's that really neat. Like they were literally made, you know, in a laboratory to just be that. And it's like, and what I love about that, and it was like we could go down the big rabbit hole forever on that. And we've talked about this a lot on the show before, and it'll keep coming up, I'm sure. But that's a really interesting recurring theme, of course, from a Catholic perspective. Of, you know, here you have, there is no more controlled environment, right, in all of Star Wars than the Camino lab. And yet the thing they're doing is not actually something that they're really in control of. Because there's something that's making these guys be who they are, and their experiences are shaping them, and they have souls, whatever you want to call it in Star Wars. It's a really interesting, you know.
Which is, I mean, the moment that, and I've already mentioned it, but the moment that struck me most was the, you know, you are property. She is property. These, you know, all clones are property. And that's like the fundamental sin, if you will, of the whole endeavor, is to try to treat a person as property. Even in a sense, the Emperor trying to treat his own body as property rather than as a gift. I'm going to can clone it, completely control it. I'm going to have unlimited power over, you know, who I am and what I can do. And whereas, you know, the dignity of the human person comes from the fact that our very being is a gift from God. And
all that's the, you know, again, don't want to go too far, but just all the time, you know, because that's something I'm continuing to kind of reflect on more and more in my own spiritual journey of like, sometimes I've had a very deist notion of my own life. You know, like God did something back when I was conceived and then it was me. And then he's like kind of back here. It's like, no, he's like, he is constantly making me to exist at every moment. Like he makes it possible for anything to, it's just that perfect transcendence and immanence at the same time. It's just so profound,
The depth of Augustine's insight. You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless till we rest in you. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good. What do you guys, and anything else we missed or something you want to, mention for the folks for next week? Things you want to spoil for John?
John, you're going to love the space clowns.
Oh, yeah. Jar Jar's cameo in episode 16 was very surprising. No, alas, no, but
I love how they do a musical number every 5 minutes.
Yeah. Life Day. Oh, goodness. Oh, my. Well, if that's all, that's just going to be it for us, I guess, this week. So listeners, as always, we want to know what you thought about this episode of Bad Batch. We've been talking about it for a while here, and also the Galactic Starcruiser shutdown while we're at it too, since we spent a good news segment on that earlier. So any of your feedback on this show, please send it our way over at starwars@sqpn.com. You can also visit the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord, or find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, and Twitter, we're there at SQPN. So previous episodes of Secrets of Star Wars, if you want to check those out, which is always fun, can be found over at sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we also want to take a moment, as always, to thank our Secrets of Star Wars patrons, including Matthew T., Kyle P., Craig H., Stephanie W., and Thomas W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Please tell all your friends, everyone you know, people on the street, whatever, to just go to Secrets of Star Wars anywhere you can find it. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, it's there. My favorite is Pocket Casts. It's on there too. So anywhere you can get those notifications to know when new episodes drop, and anywhere you can leave us a review, especially Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that you can leave ratings and reviews helps the show quite a bit. So please do that, and check out our merch store. It helps the show as well, and gets you some really cool Star Wars merchandise you can't get anywhere else, with the Secrets of Star Wars logo on there and all sorts of fun little things you can pick up over there at the merch store. That's sqpn.com/merch. So we'll be back next week to unpack the dramatic conclusion to Bad Batch Season 2 with a deep dive into episodes 15, The Summit, and 16, Plan 99. So please mark your calendars, because you will not want to miss that one. So until next time, Jon Koral, thank you so much for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Wars.
Thank you. Had a great time.
Absolutely. And Robert King, thank you as well.
It's always a pleasure.
And once again, I'm Mike Creavey. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest network you're sure to enjoy, The Secrets of Middle-earth. Find it wherever you can find podcasts, or at sqpn.com/Middle-earth.